All right, in this section, we're going to talk a little bit about the history of mental illness and how we approach the problems more today. So, looking first at the history of mental health treatment, we can see that historically this has been, well, not really viewed in the best light. We can see that traditionally, oftentimes mental health was approached with sort of this stigma or these impressions that it was due to things like witchcraft or maybe demonic possession or even deals made with the devil. So we kind of see that mental illness wasn't really taken seriously, or at least seriously in the sense of being able to be treated from a scientific point of view. Whereas things that they did do to treat mental disorders in the past were using things like prayer, incantations, sometimes exorcisms, or even what's called trepanation, which is drilling holes into the skull to release demons and spirits, which obviously is not really going to work the way we think it will today. Now, interestingly, actually, is they did see some efficacy of this, but it wasn't due to the reasons they thought. It was actually due to, in some cases, there may have been actual buildups of pressure that got released through this process, though most of the time the outcomes were negative and often resulted in illness or death. So today, of course, these are not the approaches we make, but moving forward in history, once we sort of started to take mental illness from a different approach, we still weren't able to fully solve these problems. And that led us to the question of how do we kind of deal with people that have mental illness if we can't fully solve this problem, and what do we do with them? And so it kind of created this societal problem, and it was attempted to be solved through things called institutions or mental asylums that they were called in the past. And so these were places that were intended to be sort of hospital or rehabilitation like place that patients were sent to have treatment or have other types of assessments done to them to hopefully improve their situation. But in reality, what these really turned into was just a place to house people with these disorders and kind of get them away from society. Now, today, we don't treat patients with these conditions in the same way. We do have things like mental hospitals, which are designed to try and treat patients, but from a more ethical and a more health-based approach to try and actually solve some of their problems. And these today are more effective because of the different approaches and treatments that we use, which we're going to talk about here. So the biggest improvement in treating mental health that we've made is using evidence-based treatment. And so what this is it looks at treatment that has actually been shown to work and studied from the scientific method. And so things like efficacy or testing how effective something is in a laboratory first, making sure that it has theoretical backing for why we would use it in the real world, and showing that it does produce these effects in a laboratory setting is an important first step. Then we look at the effectiveness in the real world and actually utilizing these treatments on patients in the real world, and then again showing that they are effective to treat these disorders in a real world setting as well. And so both of these two steps along the process were crucial in using evidence-based treatment to actually solve some of these problems. So testing first in the lab, making sure it shows sound evidence in a theoretical setting, and then continuing that in the real world and showing that it does still work in a real world context as well. And so what this has led us to is this idea called the biopsychosocial model. And this is really this triad or these three components that work together that help solve and treat mental disorders. And so these three approaches are the biological side of things, or basically looking at how can we treat the brain itself. Maybe that's through different biological treatments such as medications. Maybe it's through different actual physical manipulation of the brain, which we're going to talk about. But ways that we can actually treat the biology or the biological side of things in the brain. Then we also have the psychological side, which looks at how we can use different strategies, different tools, different therapeutic or therapy approaches to actually try and, again, address the issue from that side of things. And then lastly, we also have that third piece, which was the one that I was alluding to before, which is the social side of the equation, which is looking at how can we create positive social support networks, social systems to empower people and put them in a good place to help them improve upon their situation. And this is one of the areas where social workers really play a crucial role in helping with these issues.